All right, moving on to the next segment of today's show. It was actually announced yesterday by the Big Ten that they are going to play only conference games for this upcoming college football season. And this is a big announcement because it didn't really come out of nowhere. A couple people around the sport did expect it to happen, but I have a couple thoughts on this, and I have a couple thoughts on, if the Big Ten did this, a lot of people are asking, are other conferences going to do this? And I'll start off by saying this. College football right now has all of the attention on them in terms of all the people who are saying, the coronavirus, I don't know if we're going to be able to play sports this year or not. They started off with the MLB and the NFL and the NBA and the NHL. Mainly, I would say the NBA was really the one sport that when this pandemic first hit us, everyone was just really saying, I don't know how this sport is going to be able to be played. I don't know how they're going to be able to finish the season. So why don't we just shut it down right now? But here's my thing, is that if you are saying, okay, we're going to cancel non-conference games, that's fine. But there are so many big effects on so many different positions here that I want to talk about. So I'll start off by saying this. Canceling non-conference, in many cases, is going to affect the mid-major schools, the group of 5 schools, more than the Power 6, because many college football fans, really casual college football fans, will ask Zach, on a random Saturday, why is it that when I turn on ESPN to watch college football and I'm expecting to see two really good, teams, why am I seeing Alabama play against the Citadel? And the answer to that is that Alabama offers to host the game and to pay the school, the athletic department of the Citadel, to come to their stadium and really get boat raced. And going into the game, we kind of already know the results, that most likely Alabama is going to be the team that ends up winning. But the Citadel, even though they're getting boat raced in all of these games, this game against Alabama actually means a lot for the Citadel because they're getting money which goes directly into their athletic department's funds, and that enables them to pay and fund other sports that may not be as popular as college football. And that's why college football really is going to have to do their best to play, whether it's in the fall, whether it's in the spring, even though, as I said on this show the other day, I really don't think playing college football in the spring really makes that much sense for the 3 main reasons of, 1, safety. The virus is more likely to spread in the spring than the fall while the weather's colder. So while the weather is hot, why not we just be out here and do our best and play in the fall? Also, if you do play in the spring, that also means that you're going to be playing basically 2 college football seasons in a span of 8 months. For all the well-being of the players and all the well-being of the players involved, I just don't think that's safe. And I just think that puts too much stress on all the parties involved to get this done in that short amount of period of time. If one thing goes wrong, then, we're out of here. And we're doing this all. And this is really the main point I wanted to make while I was discussing this topic is a lot of times I feel like in terms of sports and the coronavirus, and I'm not blaming anyone, I'm not calling anyone specifically out, but I feel like a lot of times when we're debating, what should college football, what should all these sports do in terms of coming back? I feel like people try to say whatever sounds right and whatever sounds the best without putting any logic or any thought behind it. I'll give you a perfect example. It sounds very good to say, we don't want college football to be played in the fall because people are going to be more at risk theoretically to get the coronavirus as opposed to if they played in the spring. That means if they would play in the spring, everyone is a little less likely to get it. And you would think that sounds right, but it doesn't actually, because it's not going by any logic. Right now, in terms of numbers in this country, we are much worse now than really ever before as a country, in terms of a country as a whole. So there's no evidence to say for sure 100% that in the spring we're going to be better equipped and more safe to play than now. Like, if you're going to say that college football shouldn't be played because kids get sick, because kids could get sick, I don't think many people realize that still applies if you're not playing. The playing college football is not the difference between getting the coronavirus or not. I feel like what everyone has to realize is, in the big picture, no matter what guidelines you put out, no matter what you do, everyone is still going to be going out, especially college kids, especially if they are on campus. So, what's the difference between the chance of you getting it because of you playing college football and you getting it hanging out at a bar? Many people are going to freak out and have been freaking out after all the reports that have been going down this week in terms of, positive tests around players' locker rooms and teams' locker rooms. And basically everyone in the media is saying, because of all these positive tests, we can't play. And as great as that sounds, as, theoretically it does sound very good, and it theoretically does sound correct, there's no proof and there's no evidence to say that they didn't just get it because they went to the bar and that they got it because they were playing and practicing for college football. There's absolutely no evidence about it. And also, here's the other thing that I feel like we all have to realize from a big picture perspective. A kid dying would be super unfortunate, but it's more likely for a kid to die from either the flu or just driving to practice every day than dying from the coronavirus. And they're going to be at risk anyway. But theoretically, it sounds right. It sounds right, technically, for college athletes to be told, all right, if you just don't play, then you're not going to get the coronavirus, or your chances of getting the coronavirus are less. But it's not like school is canceled. If school is shut down and classes are canceled and the campus is shut down, no one is allowed to go on campus, I understand the argument of why you're not going to play college football, because you don't feel it's safe enough for kids to go to class. Like, if you're going to use that logic, fine. Don't have a season or just pull out. I don't really know what you would be able to do if some schools decide to open and some schools wouldn't. Obviously, a lot of it would have to depend on the location. But here's the thing, is that unlike the other major professional sports, there is not one commissioner of college football. There's a commissioner of one per each conference. Like, I think a big reason as to why a lot of the professional sports, even though a bunch of the commissioners, including Rob Manfred, are just getting absolutely crushed by the media, one thing that makes the job of the professional sports commissioners a little bit easier in terms of getting everything put back on track as opposed to the college sports is that, there's only one boss. There's one guy who is responsible in terms of the whole league and what their plan is. That's not the case in college football, which I think needs to change. I think that makes these situations that we're dealing with, and obviously we didn't really know that these are the kind of situations we'd be dealing with going into this season, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is I think college football needs to have one big commissioner, and I definitely think if they were to have that, where the sport is right now in terms of where they would be playing and where they plan on starting to play in terms of next year would be very different. But I just want everyone to know, a kid dying from the coronavirus, it's unlikely, but if it were to happen, it would be very unfortunate. But I feel like people just don't realize that a kid is more likely to pass away from the coronavirus when they're living at home or, just roaming around and just chilling and doing their own thing, as opposed to if they were in school and playing college football where they're being tested multiple times a day. And if they were to get it, and God forbid, if they had to go to the hospital, they're dealing with the best medical experts in the nation. On paper, this plan just all sounds very good, On paper, you just say, all right, like you just tell your college students it's not safe to play college football this year. If the school is shutting down, you just, live at home again. And even as unfortunate as that is, if you're going to use the logic of safety, it applies. But here's the problem. Not everyone is going by those guidelines. And, it's just super unfortunate. But here's the other thing here, is that in the Big Ten, for example, Ohio State was scheduled to play Oregon. Michigan was scheduled to play Washington. And I understand that, especially to start off the season, you don't want Michigan flying out to Washington, or you just don't want Ohio State flying all the way across the country to Oregon. Like, I totally understand that. But at the same time, I just think people are being a little too scared here. And if they're going to go by the logic they're going by now, that just means they can't play in the spring. Because I just think I'm kind of a step ahead here. And I hate to say it. I know that's going to sound like really biased and really obnoxious, but that's the truth here. Everyone's saying that college football should play in the spring. That's fine. But if you're going to, everyone who said that have backed it up with the reasons of, people are more likely to get the coronavirus now than in the spring. Based on what are you saying that by? And that's what I think everyone has to realize here, is that I think if college football wants to wait until September to see where they are, that would be kind of a smart idea. But I just don't understand this idea that just because we're going to say we're going to play in the spring, that all of a sudden means kids are less likely to get hurt because of the coronavirus in the spring than in the fall. That's my thing. I've always said, if you're not going to play in the fall, then you're not going to play at all. Because there is no guarantee that if you do play in the spring, it is going to be safer than playing in the fall. And I think this is what everyone has to realize. Just because on paper, off the bat, something makes sense, that doesn't mean that it really does make sense. And I feel like as a country, and a lot of this may have to do with the media, we are a little too quick to jump to conclusions. We have to look at the facts, examine them, and see ultimately how the right decision should be made.